So I normally start my brassicas middle of March, and then I plant them out early May. So that's about 6 weeks old, and so I don't pot them on. I normally plant them out at this size. I'll take one out so you can see it. At that size, you know, nice little root system, not root bound though, not pot bound. And yeah, plenty of growth on it. That is going to grow just fine planted out at that size. But it happens that I have these plants and I'm not going to plant them out, so I'm potting them on. So I thought I'd just take you through my process. There's not very much to it, but it's worth it for completeness. So normally I'll just put a little bit of compost in the bottom. Sometimes the plants are too big for that, and just pop these in the pot, and ideally I'll put them like that so there's plenty of extra space to get the compost in without disrupting them too much. They're really tough little plants, brassicas, so you generally don't need to be too gentle with them. And that is pretty much it. There wasn't much leaf to take off that one, but there will be on the next one. So let's have a look at this one. So I don't want those two leaves, and I don't want those little seed leaves either, but I'll take these two off. You can just leave the seed leaves on and bury them. You don't need to worry about those. So a little tiny bit at the bottom, we'll pop that in. And actually I'm going to take that little bit out the bottom because I want that plant just to go just that little bit deeper. So yeah, there we go. Pop it in, and just firm the compost around the sides there. And hopefully you'll be able to see this plant that was kind of a bit bent over, a little bit sickly looking, with those kind of floppy leaves, is kind of transformed now into that nice stocky little plant, which hopefully I'll be able to plant out within the next 4 weeks. So those were colettes, and now I'll show you Brussels sprouts. Now if ever I saw plants in need of potting on, it will be these floppy little specimens, you know, grown just in a greenhouse where it's too hot for them, so they've grown too fast, and so they're very leggy. But potting on kind of cures these sorts of ills. And yeah, so let's get these out. Be a little bit careful. Right, so basically to cure these plants, just take that leaf off, so you've got a reasonable amount of stem to bury, so you can bury them up to there, and that will help no end. That does mean again that you can only put compost at the top. There's no compost going at the bottom of these pots. There just isn't space, otherwise you wouldn't get sufficient support of that weak stem. So there we go. So I'm really happy with that little plant now. That looks so much better. I'm going to pop that down on the floor. We'll do another one of those. Still good, healthy little specimens really, these, but as I said, it's just too warm for them. And it's where to put them really, because I don't want them outside because of the problems with butterflies. but the polytunnel, which is a little bit cooler than the greenhouse, doesn't have any screens on. We also got a lot of cabbage aphid around at the moment as well, so I'm trying to, the greenhouse is kind of free of cabbage aphid right now, and also kind of has the advantage that it's got mesh screen everywhere. So now I'm doing these little black magic kale plants, and these look so good that it kind of makes me question my preferred sowing date, or previously preferred sowing date, of mid-March, because these look so actually quite a bit healthier than the ones we've just planted. And anyway, it comes on to why am I potting these on rather than planting them out, because these are big enough to be planted out, and basically it comes down to either not having enough bed space, so that's the case with the red cabbages. They're going in after garlic, and so the garlic's not going to come out for a little while, about a month's time, so I've got to pot these on, and that's reason one. So reason two is spares. So we've done a lot of planting out recently, and you know, something's always going to fail. Either some of the brassicas that we've already planted out will end up getting cabbage aphid or something like that, and they'll end up failing, where it's easier to replace them than it is to try and deal with the cabbage aphid. Or something else will fail, and I want these in reserve to take their place. So for example, a good example might be that the melons might fail, and so spares. And then the third reason is, as I mentioned, to kind of fix a problem with something that is not very healthy, and just benefit from a little bit more of a controlled growing environment and being potted on to make it a sort of sturdier, stockier plant, and just getting a little bit more TLC than it gets in the ground, because a lot of things, once I've planted them in the ground, I don't really pay very much attention to them, whereas things in the polytunnel or little greenhouse I generally check on every day if I can. And then the fourth reason is water. So things in a small module like that at this time of year pretty much need watering every day, whereas once it's potted on in here, probably doesn't need watering, you know, probably needs watering every 3 days, maybe, certainly only every 2 days. So that's a big bonus, because I don't really like being on the hook to water things every single day. And then the next reason is feed. So these little plants have been in a low nutrient seed compost, and as you can see, that, you know, one of the nice things about that is they do put on good root growth and not excessive top growth, so you do get reasonably good plants. But they're running out of feed now. You know, that about a month is the amount of time that they do well in a low nutrient compost, whereas this is a multi-purpose compost. It'll have enough feed to keep them going for another month. And that brings me to the final reason that I can think of off the top of my head, which is I really wanted to try this compost out. So I've been using this compost for my potatoes, and they seem to be doing okay in it so far. And so I've been looking for a new multi-purpose compost. This is a peat reduced compost. I quite like it. It's quite rough. It's got lots of organic matter in it. Yeah, it looks like it's going to retain water really well and be well drained as well, though, you know, so that's a kind of you know, how you get both of those things at the same time is quite tricky. I've had some terrible, really terrible experiences with compost so far this year, and yeah, it's kind of really kind of shook me up a little bit, because quite a few things have failed on me or are really struggling because of the compost that they started out in, resulting in basically zero root growth after potting on into it. And you know, it's quite shocking when you turn something out of its pot thinking you're going to see this big robust root system and you see nothing. So there they are. So there's a couple more things to mention, that when you're positioning these in the trays, it's a good idea to try and get them all kind of facing like outwards like that. So in that case you want maybe that one like that, so to give them the most space that they can kind of get in a relatively small tray. And then the second thing is watering. Now I'm still top watering these because I want to make sure that they're getting a consistent amount of water. When you bottom water, it's very variable the amount of water that a plant will take up. So I'm just filling these up to the top of the pots. And then I kind of know, you know, that each one has had a really good water. This is the tray that I pricked those brassicas out from, and you can see that a lot of these plants are perfectly good. You could still kind of prick these out again, and yeah, and they'll make pretty good little plants. I'm going to throw them away though because I don't need them now. So here's these brassicas that I've just potted on, and hopefully you can see I have tried to kind of orient them in the pot so they've got the maximum amount of space between the plants. And so we've got colettes, dwarf green curly kale, black magic Tuscan kale, breast Brussels sprouts, red drumhead red cabbages, and Calabrese marathon